When you have a data set with a bunch of date timestamps, it can be really hard to analyze for one part of that. So maybe analyze by month or hour because there are so many discrete values. So if I have this and I want to answer, for example, what hour is the busiest, it seems really tricky. But there are actually 3 ways you can pull out just the hour from this data. And you can do something like this. You can make a pivot table by hour with a count of how many tickets per hour. You can even make a chart that shows the breakdown of number of tickets by hour and day of the week. And all this is pretty easy and you can do it in just a few clicks. Let's start by talking about the first way, number format. So in column B here, instead of showing date timestamp, I want to just show the date. So I'm going to highlight all of the values in that column, and then I'll go to the format menu and choose number. And then you can see there are 4 preset date or time formats I can select. Right now it's showing date and time, but I can choose to just show date. And when I do that, I can see that my cell is just showing the date, but when I look at the function bar, it still has the entire date timestamp all the way down to seconds. So in column C here, I will choose to show just the time. So again, I'll select all the values, go to Format, Number, and Show Time. And my time shows hour, minutes, seconds, and an AM or PM stamp. Now what if I just want to show the hour? That was not one of the preset options in this date section of my number format, but there are custom date and time formats down at the bottom. So when I select that, the format creator at the top here is showing my full date and time stamp. But anything that I don't want to show, I can click on the little drop downs for that item and choose delete. And so I'm just going to get rid of what I don't want. And again, I just want to show hour. So I'm getting rid of month, minute, second, year, day, and then I have these extra punctuations in here I'll need to get rid of, so I'll click into it and use the delete button to get rid of those extra punctuations. And then if I want to add in an AM PM, I can click on the drop down in this format tool and I can add the AM PM marker. And there's options within that. When I click on it, I'll choose the full AM or PM. I'll put my cursor in the format bar and add a space between them. Now when I click apply, I can see that my cell is just showing the hour and the AM PM stamp. But notice that the function bar still has the date and time. Another cool custom date time format is day of the week. So I'm going to select this data in column E, format, number, and custom date and time. And for this one, I'm going to get rid of everything I don't want. And I'm actually going to just click in here and use the backspace. And when I have it empty, I'll click the drop down, and to get day of the week, I'm going to choose day. And when I click on the day option, I can choose to add the abbreviated day of the week or the full day of the week here. I'll choose full day of the week and click apply, and now I can see the day of the week. So the second way I can show only part of a date timestamp is with formulas. So in this column F, I want to show just the hour using a formula. So I'm going to type equals the word hour, open parentheses, and then I'm going to select where my timestamp is in A2, hit end parenthesis and enter, and I will see it's showing me just hour. If I copy this whole formula down, I'll see the hour is showing for the whole sheet, and it's coming up turquoise because I have conditional formatting on the sheet to show any values that are populated by formula with a turquoise highlight. Now notice this formula is showing me the 24-hour clock. So 1 p.m. is showing up as 13, 2 p.m. is 14. There is also a day of the week formula, and that one is going to be weekday. And when I hit enter on that, to add that date, you'll see that Monday by default is coming up as 2. And if I wanted to have a different day of the week be the first day, so instead of being Sunday, I can specify the type parameter. So it says by default counting starts with Sunday as 1. If I want Monday to be 1, I will add the type parameter of 2, and I will get 1 for Monday. I can copy that down, and now I have that formula. There are a bunch of other formulas that can populate just part of a timestamp like this. For example, year, month, day, minute, second, and so you can use these formulas to extract part of a value really nicely. Okay, so now when I come back to my initial question, which hour is the busiest? This is showing me information, but how do I analyze it? Let's try using the table function where I can group my table by a column. So I'm going to start with my column that was populated by number format. I'm going to click the drop down here and say group by column. And when I do this, you can see it still shows only one row per group here. because if you remember, my number format still actually holds the whole discrete date timestamp in here, not just the hour. So this isn't going to work. I will close out of this view and not save it. However, if I use the hour populated by formula and I choose to group by this column, now I will see any row value that was in the hour 1 is grouped in this hour 1. Hour 3 is grouped together, 8, etc., etc. So the formula function does work to group by. However, this is still not giving me any kind of aggregates. I can't really chart this or easily say which hour is the most common. So in that case, we need to use pivot tables. So I'm going to close out of this and create a pivot table, and we'll do grouping in there. With the cell selected from my table, I'm going to the Insert menu and choose Pivot Table. And the date range I have is my help ticket timestamps, which is the name of my table, and I want a new sheet. Click Create. Now, if you haven't worked with a pivot table before, a pivot table summarizes your data based on some repeated value. So it's an aggregation tool. So in this case, I want to count how many tickets were submitted for each hour of the day. So I want to aggregate by that hour. So to do this, I need to start off by adding a date time value to my rows. So on the right hand side in the pivot table editor, under rows, I'm going to click on add and choose my ticket timestamp. And it added all 800 and some rows with every single discrete date timestamp. Now, I don't want all of those timestamps. I just want each hour that is represented by my data. To do that, I'm going to right click on one of these values in my rows and click Create Pivot Date Group. I can group in a lot of different ways, but for this example, I want to group by hour. And when I select hour, you will see every hour represented in my data becomes a row here. So I have the hour of 1, no hour of 2, hour of 3, etc., etc. Now to see actually how many tickets were submitted each hour, I need to add something to the values. So I'm going to click Values and choose Add. And again, I'm just going to use my ticket timestamp, and I'm going to count up how many times each hour showed up in my data. And now I can easily see that 10 and 11 a.m. are really the busiest hours in my data set. Now, if I wanted to put this in a chart so I can see this information more visually, I can select my chart. I'm not going to select the grand total. In fact, in the pivot table editor on the right, I can uncheck show totals, so that's easier to avoid. And then I'm going to click on the more option here to choose the insert chart, and it will automatically chart this exactly how I wanted, with the hours on the x-axis and the count of timestamps on the y. So this visually shows me that 10 a.m. to about 1 p.m. are my peak hours. All right, I'm going to delete this chart and let's take it one step farther. Let's say I also want to see my day of the week. So I'm going to add my ticket timestamp. I'm going to grab it from the right hand side here and drag it under rows. And this time, instead of grouping this timestamp by hour, I want to group this by day of the week. So I'm going to right click on my newly added timestamp in column B, create a pivot date group, and this time choose day of the week. And now what I want to do is grab this and drag it into the columns area. And then I can see a chart where I have my hours on the left, my day of the week across the top. And although this is kind of hard to look at as it is, I can actually chart this and it's going to show me visually my busy days and hours. So again, I'm going to uncheck show totals and I'm going to select my data here. And this time I'll go to the Insert menu and choose Insert Chart. And I'm going to get a nice chart showing me that. I can change the chart type to an area chart, and this is going to show me the days of the week. Wednesday and Friday are contributing to my busyness here. That was just a few clicks to take that almost 1,000 date timestamps and to see what's most busy when. So there are a lot of ways to work with timestamps. You can do a lot with just one column of timestamps.